Hey there, my friend. Today I am going to be talking sensory rooms. I've had a lot of folks asking me in the last several weeks for some thoughts and tips and suggestions on what kinds of things they should be looking at and considering when creating a sensory area or a calm down area for their child. So today I'm going to talk about some of my favorite things to put into a sensory room. So let's get to it. All right, let's get started. But before I move on to actually talking about the components that I suggest for a sensory room, I want to just make it clear that every kid, every toddler, every preschooler, every elementary aged kid can benefit from having a sensory play area. Everything that children do and everything that we do as adults is done through the experience of our motor and our sensory systems. That's the foundation of our house. And that's why young kids are so busy and moving and touching things. And so if we can provide a safe place for them to do that, it's just going to make them happy. And as a result, it's going to make you happier as a parent. And I think a lot of times as parents, when we hear sensory room, we think about children on the autism spectrum. And while certainly they could definitely benefit from having a sensory zone, as I said earlier, all kids could benefit from having a sensory play area. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into some considerations that you might want to consider when creating a sensory room for your child. So first of all, you want to understand your child's unique sensory needs. Now, if this whole concept of sensory and identifying sensory needs is new to you, I'm going to suggest that you go over to my sensory video where I talk about sensory activity levels in young children, and I break down kind of what's going on, what drives those behaviors, and why some kids are seekers and why some kids are avoiders. So go over and check that out. So I want you, after you've checked that out, or if you're really aware of your child's unique sensory needs, that should drive what you're doing in setting up the sensory area in your home. So just to elaborate a little bit more, if you have a little one who's touching everything, they like touching faces and hairs and exploring everything with their hands and their fingers, then you're going to want to make sure as a part of your sensory room that you have lots of tactile things, different textures that they can explore with their hands and fingers. If you have a little one who is doing a lot of climbing and jumping and running, then you're going to want to have things like slides and climbing structures, things that are going to work those gross motor movements. And I'm going to talk more about equipment in a moment. If you have a little one that does a lot of laying on you and running into you, or that spins in circles and does a lot of like flipping upside down, then you're going to want to have things that are going to have movement and motion, like swings and trampolines, to help meet that need. So that's what I mean about understanding and recognizing your child's sensory preferences. What are they seeking? What are they avoiding? And if it's something that they're seeking, you want to definitely make sure that it's in your sensory play area. If it's something that they're avoiding, then you definitely don't want to have that in there. Okay, so let's move on. The next step would be to find a suitable area. Now, having a basement area that you could do this, because we're talking big motor movements here, right, is a great option for those families that have the space. But even for families who are living in an apartment, we can set up an area of the home to be a sensory zone. I kind of like to use, if we can't use a whole room, to maybe do like a corner area to help kind of keep everything contained. And sometimes being in that kind of corner area kind of makes kids feel kind of safe. It tunes out a lot of the extra sensory input that might be coming in from around the home environment. The next step, once you've identified where you're going to do your sensory area, is you need to declutter and simplify. When we're creating a sensory zone for kids, less is more. I've seen too many parents who in their calm down zones and in their sensory areas have tons of posters on the wall. What we're trying to do is calm their sensory systems. And you have to remember that young kids can only process about 5 pieces of information at once. You and I, as adults, have learned how to tune out a lot of unneeded and unnecessary sensory information. So, for example, when I go into a home visit, My sensory system is able to tune out the smell of the spicy dish that's cooking on the stove and the fan that's going above us and the TV. Well, not the TV. I have to have that TV turned off, but the radio that's playing in the background or some lights that might be blinking in the corner. Young children's sensory systems have not developed that skill yet. So when you're creating your sensory zone, less is more. If we have lots of stuff all over the place and posters and ABCs and colors and shapes and numbers and all of that kind of stuff, it's all going into their visual center, right? And it could overwhelm them. So you want to keep it really, really simple. Next up, you want to have sensory-friendly lighting options. So you want to have soft and adjustable lighting to create a calm atmosphere for kids. We want it to be a calm and soothing environment. So I want you to think about when you're trying to get wound down for bedtime, right? You don't want to have bright lights on everywhere and all of that kind of stuff, right? You want to start taking the lights in your room down, taking the sound down in your room. You're trying to calm your sensory system to prepare it for sleep. It's the same for kids when they're in a sensory play zone. The whole idea of this is to give them a place to organize, to calm, to work out those wiggles, and to relax their systems. So you want to have some soft lighting. A lot of times in some of the classrooms that I've worked with in over the years, some of the teachers would turn the lights off and they would have like some soft fairy lights up on the ceiling. They would have covers over some of the lights that were in the ceiling to just try to calm down the whole kind of visual experience for kids. Oh, and before I forget, if you find the information in this video helpful, make sure you give me a like and subscribe. It helps me get my information out in front of other parents who are looking for support. Okay, let's get back to it. Okay, next up, let's talk soft furnishings. So we want to make sure that we're having some things that when they sit in them, when they're laying on them, that it really is providing all of that extra sensory input and making them just feel cozy and snuggly, kind of like you do when you're sitting in your favorite recliner at night with your blanket on. So some things that can be great in a sensory room. I'm a big fan of really squishy bean bags, not the kind that you sit on and it just kind of feels hard. The kind that when you sit down on it, you just sink into it. You want to have as much surface area covered in getting that sensory input. So a nice squishy bean bag is a great thing to have in a sensory room, or especially in a calm down zone if you're going to use one of those. The nuggets that are out, and now all of the Craves, the convertible kind of foam furniture pieces for toddlers, I think those are great. Those would be fantastic to have inside of a sensory area. I like those microbead squishy pillows. Those are awesome. They can hug and squeeze them and take their fingers and kind of touch the bags while they're sitting there trying to calm down or relax. So you want to just make sure that whatever it is that you're putting furniture-wise in that calm down zone is something that's really going to kind of envelop their body. You don't want it to be a hard chair where they're sitting upright. You want it to be something that they can really sink into and cuddle into, like those mini, teeny little butterfly chairs, right? Something like that would be fantastic for calming and giving sensory input. All right, next up, I want to talk wall hangings. Now, I know I mentioned that we should keep it really, really clean and simple. If you are going to have anything hanging on the walls, I would try to make it something that has a sensory component. You can now find these kind of sensory mats and sensory circles that you could hang on the wall so your child could go and experience that. Anything like that is going to be a great thing. You know, putting a chalkboard on the wall, putting a whiteboard on the wall, anything like that is going to be a much better interactive kind of sensory experience than having lots and lots of posters on the wall. All right, next up is noise reduction. Again, we're trying to minimize what's going into that brain so that we can calm it down and keep it centered and focused and let it regroup. So we want to really limit the noise that's going on. So I personally would not have any toys in there that are noisy toys. Y'all know I'm not a fan of noisy toys anyhow because of the speech work that I've done. If the toy makes noise, then why should I have to? So I would try to really keep the noise and the noisy toys out of that room. The only thing that I might consider would be to have some soft music playing in the background, and preferably classical music. I know I'm not a big classical fan, but there's something about classical music, and I'm not talking the Baby Einstein kind of dinky 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 dink kind of classical music, just true classical music. There's something about it that helps to syncopate their heartbeat to the beat of the music, and it's a lower beat, so it's just a really calming and organizing kind of music to have playing in the background. So you could put on the music channel on the TV. I would definitely try to not have the screen on, to have the images going, because we're trying to, again, reduce the visual imagery that's going on in the room to keep it calm. But have some soft music playing in the background. The other thing is you want to have things that kind of absorb some of the sound. So having a nice, squishy, soft, furry kind of carpet on the floor, that if they're laying on the floor playing, that they're getting some of that great sensory input, but it's also reducing and minimizing any kind of echoey kind of noises in the room. Okay, next, one of my favorite things is aromatherapy. I know you're probably like, what? What are you talking about? We're talking about kids here. Our sense of smell is our strongest sense, and we can create and use that to our advantage when we're trying to calm our kids. I had read an article a long time ago about creating a signature scent, and I wish it was something that I had done consistently with my kids when they were younger. We did do a little bit of it, but not as consistently as we should have in retrospect. So a signature scent is when we're doing calming activities to associate a particular scent with that. Now, it's a personal preference there. I tend to go for lavender. I tend to go for spearmint kinds of smells, eucalyptus, the kind of calming essential oils. But you could go with whatever works best for you. So all you need to do is get a diffuser. Now they do have on Amazon, I found some of these really kind of cute ones that have kind of a kid vibe. Obviously, you're going to need to supervise with something like this. Although they don't get hot, you don't want your child playing with cords or anything like that. But you can associate, and every time your child is playing in the sensory room, maybe you turn on the diffuser and have some kind of calming scent going on in the background. How we use that as a signature scent is then, like at bedtime, maybe you have a spray that you can put on your child's blanket or on their pillow, so that when the brain is taking that information in, that scent in, it's saying, oh, that's right. I always smell this when it's time to calm down. I always smell this when it's time to relax. So you're using our strongest scent to already tell the brain, yeah, chill out. We're all good right now. So try some aromatherapy as a part of your sensory room. Okay, so let's talk now about sensory equipment. What kinds of things do we put in those rooms, right? So I already mentioned the furniture, the bean bags, the nuggets, and things like that. Now, if you have a sensory seeker, a little one who's doing a lot of climbing and running and jumping and things like that, I think having some kind of climbing structure as a part of the sensory room, even though if we're living in an apartment, we don't want to have big things like that in our apartment, but it's a great way to meet your child's need, and it's not going to be forever. So if they're driving you crazy, jumping and climbing on the couch, it might be worth it to have some piece of equipment in your living room or in their bedroom for a while they go through this stage until they grow out of it. So you can find some really cool indoors kinds of climber. I've not tried this one or seen it in person, but I found this one on Amazon by Baby Lovely. It's a climbing toy, and it looks like it would be super, super fun. It's got a little basket in it for those boys and those girls who like to throw things a lot. So having some kind of climbing structure would be great. If you don't have a lot of space, it could be as easy as a little Tykes kind of slide that folds up. Now, some other things that can be helpful from a motor standpoint would be like a play tunnel. A lot of little ones like to, crawling is great because we're getting joint compressions through our wrist and our elbows and our shoulders. So that's a great way to work on getting some extra input to the brain by climbing through tunnels. Some kids like to kind of lay in the tunnel to tune out some of the other sensory information that's going on. They have these awesome little wobble discs that they can get in if you got one who likes to look for a lot of vestibular input, so they can do some rolling around in those. That's a great thing to have in there. Obviously, one of my favorite things is the sensory swing. I am a big fan of the sack swings because with these, you can hang them from the ceiling. If you don't have the ability to hang a swing from the ceiling, there are braces that you can find that can go in doorways where you can hang these bags in the doorways. And the nice thing is you can take them up and you can take them down. But many of the sensory-seeking kids and vestibular motion kids, they're doing a lot of spinning and things like that. They love these sack swings, so they can go back and forth, side to side. You can go round and round in each direction. I usually take the inflatable disc that's in them out and just put some of those squishy microbead pillows in there and give them a nice blanket. So having a swing in there is awesome. And then I recently saw this one on TikTok, which I thought was amazing and wondered where it was when my kids were little. But they have this indoor trampoline, and it's got the netting all the way around it. It looks like it's super safe. It seems like a really reasonable price to me. And it has a swing that you can actually put in it. So if you can't do the sack swing, you could still allow your little one to get some of that swinging sensation and vestibular input as a part of this trampoline. I've seen some parents throw balls in there and turn them into ball pits, and throw blankets and pillows in there so they have a soft, squishy place to be. So I thought this was a pretty cool thing, and I'll tell you what, someday, some way, when I have grandchildren, I will be getting one of these for my grandchild, whether my kids agree with me or not. So anyhow, the trampoline is pretty darn cool. Now, some other things that could be great in a sensory room if you have space are the stepping stones. These are great for working on balance. They give textures into the bottom of the feet. Sensory peanuts are awesome for kids. You can work on all sorts of different kinds of balance and core strengthening. Some kids like to just kind of sit on them and bounce. They're fantastic. These cool massage sensory mats, again, you can put the mats together down on the floor, or I might consider hanging them on the wall, looking at, depending on what kind of input your child likes, whether they like that on their hands or whether they like that on their feet. This one is great for kids who like to do a lot of throwing and pushing and pulling things around, and that is a weighted ball. So it's a medicine ball. This one here you can get in a variety of different weights and sizes. For those little ones who are doing a lot of throwing, you know, they're throwing that ball over and over. Those balls are so light that they're really not getting a whole lot of beef and input from throwing that ball. They'd have to throw it hundreds of times to finally tire their arm out. Whereas these balls, picking them up, carrying them around, trying to roll them, gives them that heavy work. And most of those really busy kids and those throwers just love these weighted balls. So you can find those on Amazon. You can also find them sometimes at Target in the yoga area. Another great thing would be a weighted stuffed animal. I found this one online at Amazon for $39. It's 26 inches long. I thought this was a really great price for this one. But when your little one is feeling really overwhelmed, this would be great in a calm down zone so that they can have that stuffed animal and have it lay on them. Again, the idea is to give that pressure to send those good chemicals to the brain that says, relax, calm down. So you can do a weighted stuffed animal. You can also do a weighted blanket. They've come a long way and come down in price, something like this. And then finally, looking at some finger fidgets. You know, we got to have some good finger fidgets for them. So there are these really cool little calming toys that are kind of like visual cubes that you can do. There's also for kids who are looking for a lot of visual kind of stimulation. There are these really cool suction cup spinner toys that you could put on the wall or on a mirror. I love the pop tubes. Those are always a favorite for kids. The pulling and the stretching and the sounds, they love those. Obviously, the pop beads, the fidgets, those are fantastic for little ones. Now, the final two things that I think that I would love to see in sensory rooms for kiddos is to have some kind of area where they can tune things out. So I love tents. I thought this little pop-up teepee was really cute. You could fill it with some blankets and pillows. Be a great calm down area for kids if they need to just kind of tune all the sensory information out so they can relax. They could go into this cute little teepee. And one other thing that I think every sensory room should have would be a sensory table. Now, I've not seen this one in person, but I thought this table by Be Right was pretty cool because you can use it as a table, but it has the sensory bins built in it underneath. You can use it as a chalkboard. You can use it as a whiteboard, I think. It looked really, really neat and would be something that could grow with your child and also still not look horrible in your living room or in your sensory room. And then obviously some stress balls would be another great finger fidget to have for your little one in a sensory room. Oh, one more thing that I forgot to add is if you have a little one who's a real sensory seeker or sensory avoider, and you're trying to figure out how you can work on language with them, make sure that you click the link down below and check out my Sensory Activities for Little Learners ebook, where I talk more in depth about the sensory system, as well as ways that we can help meet that need and work on language at the same time. All right, back to the video. Okay, so just a few other things to consider when you're putting together a sensory room, and one of those is obviously supervision and boundaries. You always want to supervise your child in the sensory room. I mean, we're talking climbing structures and swings and things like that. So you want to set some clear boundaries for safety, what they are and aren't able to do, and you want to be there to closely monitor. Okay. You also want to do regular maintenance, especially if you're using anything like trampolines and swings, to make sure that everything stays in working order and that things are clean and maintained. A lot of times, especially in like those ball pits, oh my goodness, those ball pits are just germ fests if you're not cleaning them regularly. Kids take their crackers and their cookies, and next thing you know, you got all sorts of food pieces in there and bugs and all of that kind of stuff. So you want to make sure that you're cleaning the equipment and really looking at the quality of and the strength of the equipment on a regular basis to make sure that you're maintaining safety for your little one. The last tip is you want to be patient and flexible. And why I say that is because your child's sensory needs will be ever changing. So you want to be prepared to adapt with them accordingly, always meeting them where they're at. And finally, if you have significant concerns regarding your child's sensory processing, I strongly encourage you to reach out to your local early intervention agency, discuss with your pediatrician, or contact an occupational therapist to explore an evaluation to see what their needs might be. Again, our sensory system is complex and it has a big impact on our ability to learn and move forward. So addressing and meeting your child where they're at and getting those sensory kinds of services and supports in place can make a big difference for them, especially academically down the road in a school environment. Okay, so I have created a shopping list in Amazon with many of the things that I talked about in this video, and I'm going to put a link to that in the description below if you want to go check those things out. Okay, that is it. Those are my favorite tips and suggestions on creating a sensory area for your child in your home. I hope you found this information helpful. As always, if you have any questions, make sure that you drop them in the comments below. And make sure that you give me a like and subscribe. Again, it really helps me get my information out in front of other parents who are looking for support. All right, until next time, I will see you then.